Good morning, class. Today, I don't think anybody is here. Hi, Nico. Good morning. Good morning, Nico. How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Just fine, thanks. Oh, good to have you on. Normally, this time of the day, the enrollment sort of goes down and the optional stuff, which is fine. I know a lot of people are just watching the recording sessions. So,
Mhm.
hang on if you want to see what's going on, ask questions too. So, posted a video, right? It should be in the first part of module one by the introduction area. At the
Uh-huh.
very bottom, it kind of summarizes the first two videos, right? Why are we here? And Lights Rocky Start. Okay, so that should
Yes.
really get you going on is summarizing what's happening in those. Really, what's the important part about that little lecture I did was preparing you for the first quiz and more importantly, information on really what to put on your Earth Timeline project. And
Okay.
because this part of the module, what I try to do is start off kind of slow where there's not a whole lot of work to do, but I kind of have to have you guys doing something. This is what we have to do. And
Yeah,
so
of
I
course.
have you collecting information, trying to get started on that Earth timeline, and with hopes that everyone can get up to red Earth. That's the designation by Hazen. So what I'm going to do is maybe have a look at some examples of what people have done, to do that. I have a variety of stuff. One person decided that they didn't want to do it electronically. They were pretty good artists, or fairly good artists. So they did it on butcher paper, which is really a kind of a good thing to see. So let's have a look and see what they did. Of course, most people do it on PowerPoint or all sorts of 3D imaging stuff, whatever you want to use, even Word works. So let's have a look. Okay. So this student actually has two pieces. This is only like a half of it, and they did it on like an 8 foot.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right? So
Wow.
when I look at this, I'm just like, there's a lot of information. Of course, this thing was over the top and absolutely, But if I
Yeah.
sort of hone in over here, let's have a look at where we're at, right? So we're over sort of on the beginnings of this stuff over in the left-hand side. If I can kind of get, yeah, that's what we want to look at, right? What I like about it is if you look, it's kind of hard to see because the lines running in different directions here, but it really does follow what I've talked about, what the material that I presented in the course so far. So we start out with the Big Bang, right? We look at the accretion disk that is formed, how the solar system was formed, how the moon is formed, right? And finally, we get to Black Earth, right? This is Hazen's first stage, Black Earth. Black Earth, she talks a little bit about how the differentiation of the crust is occurring and cooling is occurring. Meteorite bombardment is happening, bringing extra materials in, keeping the earth warm, but finally it cools. The crust begins, to differentiate, and we have gray earth leading to the formation of granite. And we have blue earth. Finally, water, pools of water grow, as the earth is continually bombarded. So she's showing this history of earth, which allows you to read it. And if you could read something like that, that section in 10 minutes and learn something about the earth, that's my goal is. I mean, my goal is if I can read something for 10 minutes and learn something about the history of the earth that's solid, conceptually solid, there's your A, right?
Mhm.
And so she moves from Black Earth to gray Earth, right? And finally to where we should sort of be up right now, which is red Earth. And red Earth is really the efflorescence of life as it escapes from hydrothermal vents and begins to produce, utilizing this energy from the sun through photosynthesis, and producing oxygen. So in some way, what I want you guys to do, by the end of the module is at least have through red Earth done, on your Earth timeline, right? So this is one way in which she's done it. And now, of course, when she moves over to the Paleozoic, which is really Hazen's green Earth all the way up, it's way too complicated. Oh my God, she's got stuff in here. She's tunicates, she got worms, she got trilobites. I mean, there's almost every single animal and condition in the world that you can imagine there. And one of the big flaws about this is this course is about anthropology, really, that once life begins, the single point of life begins, what lines are leading to us? And what are those transitions along the way? So we can take a huge can of worms and just get it down to one worm. And
Mhm.
that's really what we want to be paying attention to in the material that's being read, which lines are leading to us. And you can also include, of course, conditions on Earth that are making life compatible. You know, between those two things, you're going to end up with a lot of information anyway to do a timeline project. Now, this one is okay. I think I like to show the Precambrian, the early stuff, because it does show, you know, Hazen's, you know, color phases actually very well, and some of the earlier stuff that was shown a while we're here. But let's go to what someone's done electronically.
Okay.
And this is the format that everyone's really going to use,
Yeah.
right? Right. I mean, you know what? I don't want anybody spending their entire existence writing up something like that. You know, she loved doing it. Fine, she's an art major, go for it. You know. All right. So what is the student? What has the student done? You know, very basic sort of PowerPoint converted into a PDF. But you know what I love about this kind of stuff is that you can be, you know, I mean, I thought what cut and paste artistic, right? You can just utilize the web to pretty much grab any images you want because we don't care about copyright. No one's going to resell this stuff. So find
Yeah.
something, you know, visually descriptive, and then put a little annotation that brings it to life a little better, man. That complements it. And I think pictures are like 90% of the job. I mean, I always think that way, right? Um, so when I see something like this, I'm thinking, yeah, there you go. There's Earth's early phase, and this is what Hazen was describing. So people get a visual image of what Earth was like, you know, a sterile place that wasn't going to let life happen. You know, early description about when the time is too. It's important to let people know when this is actually happening. And as you build, you know, your Earth timeline, the dates like that are important too, because you will see something like that on a quiz, right? So this is very good. This just reinforces the kind of stuff that you're going to be seeing on, you know, something you're going to be graded on. Formation of the Earth. Yep, again, right on the timeline. When did it happen? 13.8 billion years ago, right? What about Earth? When did Earth come around after this stuff? 4.54, right? So great, we're getting a timeline so people can see in their head. How did it form? Formed by the pulling of gravity and the cosmic dust. The gases that came together in balls and made larger and more meteorological impacts. That is such a concise, nice little statement to throw in a PowerPoint, right? But boom, nothing complicated, but exactly what happened. That lets a reader just kind of flip through. I have getting a conception of what's going on and being able to look at an image like that and go, yeah, there's what the story is, and then there's what the image is conceptually, and they kind of fit together in a nice, simple story that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very straightforward.
Very, very straightforward. There's nothing wrong with straightforward. A lot of people have arrows and complicated diagrams. I'm going, you don't need to have that stuff. You know, let our minds do the work. Give us the basic stuff, and we can put it together and see what, you know, right? You can put it together in your own head and see what's going on. I think that's very, very clever in what they've done. And that's the way an educator does it too. We kind of put together things like that when we're thinking about it. Well, next, what happens? What's interesting? Well, yeah, the moon was created. And it shows, you know, a little idea, Theia, a planetoid previously orbiting the Earth, you know, with, you know, boom, smacks into the Earth. And we have the moon. Now, here's the thing, is that when this happened, when she put that in there, the moon created, how do you think she could have done that better? Moon created 4.5. We see all the text, but we don't see the moon being created, do we?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, see, you when you lose the visual, man, you lose what happened. You know, suddenly on the next slide, there's the moon back there. Well, where are the mechanics behind it? There's so many wonderful drawings out there that she could have just thrown an image in there. So I think if you can learn to be critical, you know, and this one's like at the A line, it's like 90%. Okay. And that's really what I graded her. She made the A line. But I'm also throwing this out here to so that you can start thinking too with me about how to make it better so that you can hit that solid A target. Right?
Mhm.
Okay. But the wording is good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with those straightforward sentences that are sequential and allow you to sort of at least try to conjure an image. The image would be better itself to complement though. Okay. All right. So, you know, she does enter this idea here that we are entering a new sort of era from 4 to 3.6 billion years ago. What life may have looked like at this time. And this is really when we're into sort of, you know, blue Earth now. You know, we still have the gray continents. Earth is still warm. I like that because the moon is really close at that time. The moon was that big in the sky. It was orbiting the Earth very fast. And then it began to slow down and recede away. But what she's showing too is the first forms of life on the ocean floor, and those are the stromatolites that are very important evidence. So this picture gets kudos. It really does. You know, if you know the student can explain what's going on. Now I can see everything that's happening in that picture, but would you?
That's a great question. I
Yeah,
mean,
you
I
see.
could probably get a little bit. I mean,
Yeah. Now, if you hadn't taken this class before, would you know
oh
anything about
yeah,
this?
no, of
Yeah.
course not.
Yeah. So there you go. That's what we're doing is trying to create an educational power, you know, timeline that your kid brother could read or kid sister could read and go, now I understand.
Yeah.
So any image that's not just decorative, like this is a really good image, should be sort of, there should be some explanation to what's going on. Like, refer to the image above, and you can put little numbers like A, B, C, or D and talk about the different things that are happening, on Earth at this period of time. And I think that would have enhanced it and made it a little bit better. Okay. So, we have the little bulleted points, but I think they should refer more to the image. Okay. More towards the image. So when it says oceans formed 3.8 billion years ago after the Earth cools, maybe you think there should be a little information on where the oceans came from. What do you think?
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah, oceans
That
form like, well, ex nihilo of where, right? How do they
doesn't
form?
explain what an ocean is. Yeah.
Yeah, what is it? And the importance of it. I think that would have made it a lot better too. That the ocean's there, but yeah, how? So a little bit of the hows need to be plopped into. So this 90% will get 100% with a little bit of that. So put a little bit of process on the critical stuff like water. It's like one of the largest things ever, water. Water, the arrival of oxygen is huge too. So those things really need to be explained. Okay. All right. Now, the next era she goes into is the Paleoarchean, and this is the white phase of Earth, right? This is when we're going into, the next sort of section which we're going to look at. And we don't want to get to that point this quite yet. But when I look back on what happened before, I'm missing a discussion of red Earth in here, Hazen's red Earth. I don't see the evolution, all those stromatolites in there, these prokaryotic organisms that are evolving oceans. I mean, they're evolving oxygen that are going to be changing. They'll be oxidizing all the free iron and creating banded iron formations all around the world and turning the bottom of the oceans red. That oxygenation event changed everything. It oxidized almost all the rocks out there, recalculated them back in the rock cycle, and just dramatically increased the amount of minerals that are on Earth. We went from 200 minerals, that was it, on all the rocks together, to 5,000, which we have today. I know it. And it's like the oxygenation just added like 2,000 right off the bat. 2,000, bam. And then what happens is as life begins to evolve and expand, living organisms also die. Unfortunately, we got to do that. But we, become very complex, and our minerals complexity is returned back into soils and back into rock cycles, which increases the mineral complexity of rock. That's why we have 5,000 minerals today. And the thing is, the more complex the minerals, the more complex the life. One drives the other. When you talk about complex plants, a lot of energies, a lot of nutrients. Well, you need to have complex soils to feed those plants as they're growing in complexity. So as life dies, it enriches the soil, allowing for more fertilized soil, more minerals, and more complex life. It's like coevolution happening here. And between something that's inorganic is the earth and the organic life which is on it, which is beautiful, man. It's a beautiful system, a symbiotic coevolutionary strategy. If that were in there, some information about that, this thing would have been golden, glowing, right? And just
Yeah.
and just two more slides would have pushed it to that point. Okay. So I hope that becomes kind of easier to see, what's going on here. And also,
Definitely.
I like to show people these images because students aren't creating these images, they're just grabbing them off the web, right? There's tons of stuff like this to feast your eyes on and figure out how it's going to work best with your presentation too. Huh?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of like the how you said put like bullet points like according to like different parts of the image like A,
Yeah.
B, C, and D.
A, B, C, and D. Yeah. Say refer to image above, A, this is
Yeah.
what's happening. And you don't have to put every little PowerPoint full of images. You can still have text on it. Yeah. 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 And, I think you can do that with, any images with any like, Photoshop or whatever, any kind of thing where you can put little text things on it. Yeah. So that would be just awesome if you did that. That with little arrows or something too. Okay. So now we're looking at that, and there's some even ones which are lesser than this. I mean, stuff that just barely made a C, where they just threw a little text up there and like 10 slides, and really I just let people pass. One of the reasons is it's COVID period, everyone's stressed out and not doing well. But
Yeah.
as long as I get something, you're going to pass. But I think that if you're really going to learn something in class and get an A, it needs to be just basically at this level, hopefully above, and I want every generation of students to make those improvements. Okay. Now I produce also like a small rubric for this thing too, to kind of show you, which parts are going to be graded and how I'm going to be looking at it in general, because when people are doing artistic projects, there's a lot of wiggle room there. Everyone has their own sort of style and presentation. I kind of need to evaluate if I'm learning or not. Right?
Yeah.
So minimally, we want to do sort of a chronological framework, right? So people at least know when things are happening. There's a timeline involved in this, in a correct sequence. Did that period happen when it did? I'm going to be looking for that. Then this one happens, then this one happens, then this one happens. Okay. So you can use, Robert Hazen's color sequences to begin. They're fine. I think, the first, a couple of them, the Black Earth, gray Earth, we can use red and even white Earth, work well in the chronological sequences. But when he turns to green Earth, that's when, life becomes complex. Geez, that's a 500 million years of complexity that you really have to be able to truncate down. And that's when it's best to sort of turn to the Earth, what we call the geological time scale.
Mhm.
And I'll show you that in a second. And then if you start switching towards the geological time scale, the arrival of life, the sequence, and with the rest of the material that I'm presenting makes a lot more sense. A lot of people will take the entire geological time scale, put it out there, make the tick marks in their slides, and then kind of impose Hazen's color scheme over that, which works great too. Because the geological time scale is far more standard than sort of Hazen's sort of approach. Hazen's is sort of an easy sort of conceptual thing to do.
Mhm.
Next, enumerate major geological and physical transitions, right? Illustrate and enumerate. That's what I was showing you, some of the triumphs and failures of the last students. From the beginning of Earth all the way, to the arrival of humans. And I think that it's not too early to sort of mention this, that really, because it's a course in anthropology, we should be really also making sure when we finish the chart that we're talking about a pretty good sequence of what's happening in human transition becoming modern, right? Here's what happens is that a lot of people, and I want to say a lot, like most people, don't even start this project to the last 3 weeks of school. They're just like, oh, there's nothing really to do now, screw this, right? I'll just do it later, all right? And they wait to the last 3 weeks, and they're in such a rush to go back to the very beginning of the class, put all this stuff on. They have zero time to complete anything about human, and they put a bunch of stupid images of like Fred Flintstone up there. I'm like, oh my God, what happened, right? The most important part of the class, they don't know anything about. So don't let that happen to you. Make sure that
Okay.
we're pretty rigorous on the type of information you begin it with all the way through. I'm going to be looking for that sort of continuity. And so would a reader. The reader reading something like, wow, this is making a lot of sense, all of a sudden just falls apart at the very end, like a terrible, trashy novel. We don't want to have that happen to you, right? All right. Now, another thing here says, illustrate and illuminate the elements responsible for the assemblage of the appearance of life. This is so critical. That because it's a laboratory, we want to know, what were the things responsible for life? Where did it happen at? So, a big, huge part of the lecture that I gave, I posted, and as well as Robert Hazen's book and film Life Rocky Start, as an experimental evidence that it's happened. Like these people did this, these people did that, at trying to verify where organic molecules came from and verify where we think life originated from. And that is really something you should have on your timeline. The very important descriptions of what's been done, and
Yeah.
showing kind of what the first life was about. That would be big kudos. Okay. And that's going to be worth 10 points right there. I mean, that's where the other person, the previous, was 5 points for missing a couple of the slides in there that were illuminating the red phase. And they also missed 5 points because there really wasn't anything about the evidence about it. Life disappears. Well, how the heck did it appear? So she got a 90 barely. But if you include those two things, man, you pick up those full 10 points off to 100% you go. All right. So 5 points, illustrate and enumerate on the evolution of the first animals and their transition to vertebrate forms. I put the extra the real solid 5 points here because in this section, and you'll see right after the timeline construction instructions, there is a section on vertebrate life and a lecture by Elizabeth Stramaguli. I think how you spell her name, but Lizzie. And she does a wonderful video on the Earth coming out of the white phase and making its transition to green Earth, and how invertebrate forms become vertebrate forms. And this is so important. And also in Hazen's book, and as well as in his little film, The Rice Rocky Start, he talks about the first invertebrates becoming vertebrates. So you need to talk about that because that transition is near and dear to us because we're vertebrates and we got backbones. and showing how that life moved towards vertebrate life and which ones were leading to us is just stellar. Now we're on the road, right? That diverges from all the other things, and we've got our line coming towards us. So that's an important cornerstone for you. Okay. 5, illustrate and illuminate the evolution of the first land animals and their first transition to mammals. Yeah. So where do we come from? Well, we actually came from freshwater fish. What were the first land animals like as they made their transition to reptiles? And which line of reptiles led to mammals? That's what we really want to see too. And then how did mammals finally make their transition to primates? Which ones? What were a character? Which characteristics did they have? What are some sample species? And why did they do it? What were the conditions on Earth like? And then lastly, the last part of the course, you'll be talking about the evolution of primates, the rise of great apes, and from ancestral mammalian forms to the glorious humans, right? All the way
Yeah.
up to humans. And I do this 5 points at a time. So when you look at this, you make sure you have it on your timeline, right? So there's no way to forget it because I match it. I just don't put 1, 2, 3, 4. I match it with a point value. When people see point values, they tend not to forget it as much, right? So if
Yeah.
you follow exactly what you have before you, there's no way to miss out in each one of those points. And that's the way I grade them. I'm going, hey, yeah, this point right here, number 5, with 5 points, nothing on your timeline about that. So I can't give you the 5 points for it.
Of course.
So if people will follow that, then you're going to be right on the money with it. And of course, as you can see, as you're moving through the studying on the different material to keep building the timeline, because it's still going to come back to bite you on the quizzes that are going to happen on the end of the modules. So if you build a timeline as you go, every student that's ever done that has just whooped this course. And they go, man, that course was easy. And all of the ones that don't do the timeline to the end, they say, damn, Mercer's hard. Mercer's course was the hardest one I ever had. Well, it's like, duh, try not doing a math problem until the exam starts, right? It's, the same way. Okay. All right. So I don't want to belabor that anymore, but this timeline, I mean, this rubric is something you should have download and sort of keep there when you're doing the timeline project in front of you,
Okay.
so you'll know what's important. Okay. All right. Now, I didn't want to make a real long meeting of this today because it's more of an instruction how to really get you going and all this stuff. But I do want to look back. Where is it? I'm going to need to bring up something first. Page. Yeah, let me get this up. Oh, there we go. Now I'll do a share. Oh, there we go. Oh, here we go. All right, so I mentioned something earlier, and I did not complete what I really wanted to say about it. And I talked about, parsing up the timeline into sequences. We talked about either using Hazen's timeline or the geological timescale. So I put a couple of examples of the geological timescale up here for you. Now, the first one is a real simplified view where someone's actually tried to do a real, timeline, but this is grossly oversimplified. But
Oh,
you can
somebody made
see,
this.
well,
Like,
no, actually, this is taken off the web page. So
oh,
actually,
okay, okay.
some professional made this for like a 3rd grade class, right? So third
Yeah.
graders, there's the geological timescale and there's life in it. But that's not enough things going on there so you can make heads or tails about what the hell happened, right? They're just a
Yeah.
bunch of images, and that's not descriptive enough, right? So this would be like a D in my class if you did something like this. But the timeline is relevant. So those are the basic benchmarks of time. So the Hadean, the early, like Hades, right? Fire is anything, earlier than 4 billion years. That's the formation of the Earth. Then we move to the Archean, 4 billion to 2.5. Archean is just the origin of primitive life. Then from 2.5 billion years ago to 541 million years, that's called the Proterozoic. That's when life becomes more complex, free from the Earth. Then we get the Paleozoic era from 541 to, whatever, roughly 250 million years ago. And paleo means old complex life, paleo, old. So this we get the rise of complex life during the Paleozoic, and that's really where Hazen's green phase starts. But Paleozoic is more descriptive because it's the old world is broken down into many components of Paleozoic. And then we have the Mesozoic, which begins 250 million years ago. And Meso means middle, so middle life. What was middle life? Well, really middle life is sort of the rise of terrestrial animals, complex, reptiles, and finally mammals. Paleozoic, the older stuff, you're going to find out more oceanic forms of life. Life is still bound to the ocean. The Paleo old oceanic life, transition to Mesozoic, terrestrial life. And we have our ancestors in there too. We got to track our ancestors. Then finally, when we leave the Mesozoic into our era, the Cenozoic, which began 65 million years ago, this is the end of the dinosaurs. The reign of the mammals ends, and the rise of the mammals, and as well as the primates, us. This is our sort of thing. So we want to do a timeline that resembles something like this. This is much better for the outline of what you're doing, like how you set up all your slides should be sort of organized like this. Now,
Okay.
in a more concrete way, this is how you can do it. You can look at it like this. This is the tick marks. So however you set your slides up is fine, but these are the tick marks of when things happen. Now, with a word of warning is why I showed you this, that geologists love to truncate things down into itty little pieces of time, right? Look at those things called epoxy. You don't worry about that. We don't want to worry about every single individual epoch where some minor transitional thing is going on. That's just too much information. And if your kid, sister, or brother were trying to read through that, they'd throw it away because it's too complicated.
Yeah.
Right? The one is like, what's a good middle point to allow them to understand? I think the error level is just fine. Show things in error. So let's see what errors we've got here. Well, before 540 million years ago, we've got the Proterozoic, the Archean, and the Hadean. That's fine because basic things happen in there, and those follow, Hazen's color phases. Well, then we begin the Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic. There's your timeline, right? Those are the things that are going to be concentrating you on those sections versus having to go to the period and the epoch and all that crap, which can be very confusing and it's not going to help us out very much. So, if you're going to talk about a human ancestor, something important happened in the Mesozoic, to say in the Mesozoic, Mesozoic's this long and our ancestor appears about this part of the Mesozoic, that would be just great. Instead of going down, our ancestor appears during the Mesozoic, in the Jurassic period, in the early part of the Jurassic period, just redundancy is ad nauseum, right? You would impress a geologist, but not your kid, sister. So just letting you know, so to a point where to let you know how to utilize this chart. All right, so I've given you that basic framework of it, and see charts like these, where you can use as a model are everywhere. If you just type in the geological time scale, there'll be one out there that it's usable for you where you can decipher the time periods a little easier. If this one, if your visual gaze doesn't set in on this one. So don't be limited just to what you're seeing here. This geological time scale is used in millions of different forms, but they all say the same thing. Now, lastly, I think you've seen this before, is that, this is where the student timeline project examples are. What I'm going to do, I've got hundreds of these, from just students in the past, is go through and try to find like a really top A quality one and post that sometime tonight. So you're going to see an additional A, but it's going to say high A to it. So you'll know, the Mac Daddy, the one to chase to do it, right? Right? Yeah, right. And I figure lengthwise, people will, well, how long does it have to be? Well, there's no have to be's, but on general, if you're getting 30 to 35 slides and they're done correctly, you can do a nice timeline. I've had someone do with 260 slides, and what the hell happened? You don't have a life or something?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I know, like A's is as much as you're going to earn. And then I got to sit there for 5 hours and read the damn thing. I was almost going to knock points out. Like, this is just getting insane. There was so much, I was learning. There was so much information, right? Like, you have a PhD do this for you. So you don't want to go over the top. Once you're getting above 40 slides, that's getting a little over the top. And I think it's not going to encourage your learning at that point. You're just too much of the same thing. It's just not enough. All right. So 35, well done. I think you got it. Okay. All right. Now, what you really want to get started on, once you've got the stuff in bed, once you got the redder stuff done and on that timeline, once you get it on the timeline first, you are ready for the next phase. You're ready to go into snowball Earth, what we call the Edicarian or the cryogenic area, right? Where life almost gets eliminated from Earth. Like exactly what we're doing right now. We may actually end up not so much in a global warming, but this thing may actually reverse on us and throw us into a cryogenic period. That's often what happens, which is even worse, where every ocean on Earth freezes over and the ice sheets cover every single continent. That would be horrible. I was in Iceland over the summer. I know it'd be crazy. I was in Iceland this summer. I went up to the glacier. Like, that's no place I want to live permanently. I'll tell you that. But she really does start and really discusses, the first sort of invertebrates and vertebrates. So to tease out some of those examples, show what's going on leading up to the rise of more complex forms is a great little lecture for her to have, right? Now, in addition, I've copied a little chapter out of the book called The Origin of Evolution of Vertebrates, right? That is
Hmm.
excellent because perfect examples of the actual ones that were leading to us. Now here, you can try to cut and paste, using like the loop tool or like a Microsoft, or when you see some of her examples, maybe just type them in on the web and yank an example right off, images, right? Cut and paste, throw it on your thing, and you can utilize those, just sort of paraphrase, don't copy it, paraphrase what they're saying to nail those transitions leading up into the Paleozoic, into the green phases of Earth. Next thing you know, you're already to the white phase, you're right to the green phase, ready for the rest of the course and done with module 1. Okay. Okay. It should be a pretty much of a snap to have that done. Okay. Now, next, and all the students watching this now, as you're producing these things and you're unsure of yourself where you need help, but bam, just hit me up with a text and I'll just send you a link and we'll Zoom, right? And show me
Yeah.
what you've got so far. I can read it and see if it makes sense. Maybe give you some ideas of things you might want to, throw in. And I'll be happy to brainstorm with you. Okay, I really want to be there to assist. And I think the students that reach out to me and that want to do that, I mean, they deserve everything they can have, right? So don't be afraid. Okay, cool.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. So I just wanted to do like a brief half hour today to get you guys going on this. So, since you're here, you get to be sort of the spokesman for everyone in class. I love that when it happens. So mostly your issues are going to be everybody's issues too. So anything you're thinking about, or is everything going okay? Or what do you think?
Yeah, I did have a couple questions,
Go for it.
just pertaining to like the class overall, right?
Yeah.
So I know there was a Zoom meeting on Tuesday. I couldn't go to it this week because I had work. But
Yeah.
when I tried to watch it back, it didn't let me. I don't know. It might just be
Oh, it
Canvas
didn't?
or like, no, it
Okay.
didn't let me.
Well, here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get that video
Hmm.
and I will convert it and put it on YouTube. And then I'll
Okay.
attach an announcement and send it out so you'll have it there for you. Okay.
All right.
And,
Perfect.
and
Thank you.
and what I discussed in that one is I went over the slideshows, on science to talk a little bit about the nature of science and the history and development of science, the important aspects of it, the ones that I'm going to be looking for, like on the quiz. So it'll help you
Mhm.
narrow down the scope of the information. So that was actually an important one. And thank you for letting me know that you couldn't get in there because other students have had the issue too. So I'll look forward to that this evening. Okay, we'll see it coming in an
Okay.
announcement. All right,
Sounds
cool.
good.
Thanks so much. See, look what you've done. Good stuff, right? All
And
right.
then I have
Okay,
two more questions.
go for it. Mhm.
Um, so obviously, I've been looking at the work for like the quizzes, right? Are the
Yeah.
quizzes like multiple choice or are they short
Yes.
answer?
So here's the thing for the laboratory section. Yes, they're all basic multiple choice. Generally
Okay.
just 15 questions. Some of the bigger things like, what did Robert Clason mean by black earth?
Yeah.
Which were the following conditions? Which one of the following was a condition for red earth? It's something like that to make sure that, hey, you have any clue as well as going on the reading, right? This is basic stuff. So I know where you're at. And if you miss those things, you know that you haven't done any work. Okay. They're that simple. They're that simple.
Okay.
I don't want fill in the blank. I don't want that because really the work is in the laboratory stuff, the creating stuff, what you're doing, like this project, in some of the labs, we're going to be doing a module 2. So there are
Hmm.
no sweat quizzes because if you've done your timeline project up to red earth, you'll look at this thing and you'll answer each question within 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're multiple choice and they're one of 4 choices. I don't give 5 choices and there's no all the above, but none except for C. That
Yeah.
gymnastic stuff I don't do. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Perfect. And I had I okay, never mind. I actually had another question, but you answered it earlier, so
Okay.
that one's fine.
Okay. All right. So we're good.
Yeah,
All right,
I
cool.
think so.
Now I did record this meeting, so it'll be on there too, unless you want to reflect on it. All right.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot for showing up and your input. I think it's been pretty valuable here. Thanks. All right.
Thank
And
you.
hopefully I'll catch you next week if you're around.
Of course. All right. Have a good day.
You too. Okay. Bye.